Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jim Byron, president of the Richard Nixon Foundation, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this commemoration of the 109th anniversary of the birth of the 37th President of the United States. And what a joy it is to be gathered with friends here together again after last year's ceremonies were celebrated virtually due to the COVID pandemic. I'd like to thank a few very special guests for joining us this morning to pay tribute to President Nixon's life of service and to celebrate today with us, beginning with the mayor of the great city of Yorba, Richard Nixon's hometown, Carlos Rodriguez. Please welcome Mayor Pro Tem Gene Hernandez and his lovely wife Louise. And thanks to all of you here at the Nixon Library and to those watching and celebrating online for joining us. I'd now like to ask the side boys from Troy High School, JROTC, to step into position. Would you please now welcome Navy Commander Samuel Ravello, chaplain of the 15th Marine Expeditionary Unit, for this morning's invocation.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, the author of life, the one who directs the beginning and end of our lives, we come humbly before your presence to commemorate what will have been the 109th birthday of President Nixon. We take time today to remember his legacy, his enormous achievement, and his leadership. President Nixon once said that the greatest sin is remaining passive in the face of challenges. Today we ask you to give us strength to overcome the challenges our nation and the world are facing this year. Give the leaders the wisdom, the strength and courage to remain faithful to your leadership. Teach us to be grateful for all the blessings you have bestowed to our nation. But we also be mindful of our responsibilities. May each one of us make the difference in the place you have called us to live and serve you. Father, bless those who lead and bless those who follow. In the name of Jesus I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Commander. Now let us honor America as I ask Troy High School to present the colors and the Navy Band Southwest to play our national anthem.
T. Cut. Detail. Parade. Hut.
Thank you for that stirring rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner. We are gathered outside, just steps away from the home in which Richard Nixon was born on January 9, 1913, on one of the coldest days ever recorded in the then sleepy Orange County town of Yorba. The president famously opened his memoirs with the simple phrase, "I was born in a house my father built." And we honor President Nixon today, as we do each year on this date, for the nation and the world which he built over the course of his public life. During his service as a member of Congress, a senator, the Vice President of the United States for 8 years, and as President, and as a respected elder statesman, Richard Nixon dedicated himself to advancing the great cause of peace and freedom at home, here, and abroad. He left the presidency nearly 50 years ago, and it is becoming apparent to many today that it was Richard Nixon's vision that he executed over nearly 50 years in public life that shaped the world that we live in. And through the works of the Richard Nixon Foundation, his legacy of service to a cause greater than himself will continue to inspire people far into the future. Today, in the shadow of the house in which he was born and at the place where he and his beloved First Lady, Pat Nixon, were laid to rest, we mark the President's birthday with the laying of a wreath from the President of the United States, the Honorable Joe Biden. We are grateful to have with us this morning, as the President's representative, Rear Admiral Robert Nowakowski, who will lay the wreath. The Rear Admiral serves as Reserve Vice Commander, Naval Forces Central Command, U.S. 5th Fleet Task Force, Littoral Combat Ship Lead, Commander, Naval Surface Force in the U.S. Pacific Fleet. Admiral.
Good morning to everybody. How's everybody doing today? It's good to see bright and shiny faces and on a beautiful day here in San Diego, or North County, I would say. So I drove up from San Diego this morning, and it was, I think, the fastest time to get here in my life. It took me literally 58 minutes, so good times. I think people are hunkering down for that Chargers-Raiders game tonight. I don't know. But good morning to you all. It is truly an honor to be here commemorating the birth of our 39th President of the United States, Richard Milhous Nixon. In fact, the last time I visited the Richard Nixon Library and Museum was literally 2 years ago to the day. And wow, it's great to be back. Thank you for inviting me, Jim and staff. Mayor, great to see you this morning. And thank you for the invocation, chaps. And I just want to give a big shout out also to the Navy Band. And always amazing. And also to our JROTC URA cadets back there. I think they were sharp, crisp, and clean, and glad that we have up-and-comers in our new generation here, and looking to see them in the force in the next couple years as they move forward and help provide national security to our nation. So thank you to the cadets as well. Thanks, cadets. And last but not least, I'd like to give a huge shout out because flag officers have amazing people that work for them. And so I'm going to read you a speech today, but I want to also give a shout out to a fantastic public affairs officer who couldn't be with us today. And his name is Lieutenant Joey Seymour. He is a huge Richard Nixon advocate, fan. He's been to this library many, many times, but unfortunately he couldn't be with us today. But he did a lot of research on the speech that I'm going to give to you today, and I'd like to, as a good leader would do, I'd like to pay tribute and give acknowledgement to the person that actually helped me write the speech. So thank you, Joey, and I know you're probably at home either watching this or playing with your kids and having a good time off during the weekend before you hit it running on Monday. So with that, again, I'm Admiral Rob Nowakowski. I'm currently, as Jim mentioned, I'm dual-hatted as the Vice Commander for what they would call NAVCENT, or Fifth Fleet, over there in the interesting part of the world. And I'm also on active duty as the commander for what they call Task Force Littoral Combat Ship. My prior job was as the Deputy Commander for Naval Education and Training Command, and also as the Deputy Commander for Navy Recruiting Command. And the reason I wanted to tell you that was because a lot of the speech that I have today is written and gives you some history of President Nixon, because I would have never had the Deputy Commander Navy Recruiting job if it wasn't for President Nixon, and I'll get into that a little bit later. So among President Nixon's many, many domestic accomplishments detailed superbly here at the Richard Nixon Presidential Library Museum was following through on a campaign promise to end the draft and begin an all-volunteer force. This meant that our service branches would have to shift their focus to recruiting. But before I discuss how the all-volunteer force came to be, I'd first like to briefly talk about Richard Nixon, the sailor. So as you heard earlier, he had a huge political career, and he also had a pretty lengthy reserve or Navy career, if you didn't know that. So Nixon was one of 6 United States presidents to serve in the Navy. In fact, Nixon, along with Kennedy, Johnson, Ford, and George H.W. Bush, were Navy reservists. Only President Carter was an active duty sailor. On June 15th of 1942, Richard Nixon joined the United States Navy Reserve as a lieutenant junior grade. He would remain in the reserves until retiring on June 1st of 1966, so a pretty lengthy career. At the rank of commander, the highest ranking of his fellow Navy presidents. So that's a huge accomplishment for a president and somebody that was in the political arena to also be a Navy reservist and fulfill his obligation and his commitment to the nation in that role. During World War II, Richard Nixon volunteered for sea duty and reported to Commander Air Force, United States Pacific Fleet, where he was assigned as officer in charge of the South Pacific Combat Air Transport Command at Guadalcanal in the Solomons, and later at Green Island. His unit prepared manifests and flight plans for C-47 operations, which is a plane, and supervised the loading and unloading of that cargo aircraft. While on active duty, besides a letter of commendation, Nixon earned the American Campaign Medal, the Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal, and the World War II Victory Medal. He is entitled to wear 2 engagement stars on his Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal for supporting air action in the Treasury Bougainville operations from 27 October to 15 December of 1943, and for consolidation of the Northern Solomons from 15 December of 1943 to 22 July of 1944, right there at the end of the World War II. Having been a volunteer himself for 26 years, his Navy career, no doubt, factored into his decision to do away with the draft and begin an all-volunteer service. During a radio address on October 17th of 1968, presidential candidate Nixon said, quote, "Today, all across our country, we face a crisis of confidence. Nowhere is it more acute than among our young people. They recognize the draft as an infringement on their liberty, which it is. To them, it represents a government insensitive to their rights, a government callous to their status as free men. They ask for justice, and they deserve it." He also noted during that interview, quote, "I feel this way. A system of compulsory service that arbitrarily selects some and not others simply cannot be squared with our whole concept of liberty, justice, and equality under the law." With this campaign promise, the wheels were in motion to end the draft. Prior to the Vietnam War, being drafted was just something a healthy young man was expected to do if called upon, just as his father and grandfather had likely done in the two world wars. Yet, the controversy associated with the Vietnam War and the bitterness over who avoided the draft and who did not led to a number of major changes in our military and our American society. On May 13th of 1969, President Nixon spoke to Congress on reforming the military draft and stated, quote, "I appointed on March 27, 1969, an advisory commission on an all-volunteer armed force. I asked that group to develop a comprehensive plan which will attract more volunteers to military service, utilizing military manpower in a more efficient way, and eliminate conscription as soon as that is feasible." The group was the Gates Commission and was headed by Thomas S. Gates Jr. Nixon had wanted the commission to contain a mix of people, including some who did not support the all-volunteer force, so that their final analysis would be more credible. The irony is, Gates was one of those who opposed the notion. President Nixon told Gates, quote, "That's exactly I want you as the chairman. If you change your mind and think we should end the draft, then I'll know it is a good idea." What a smart man. The commission issued its report in February of 1970, in fact 1 month after I was born into this world. It found adequate military strength could be maintained without conscription. On 30 June of that year, Dwight Elliott Stone was the last American draftee to be inducted into military service. This actually made him somewhat of a celebrity. A month later, Congress did not renew the draft, effectively ending it and fulfilling President Nixon's 1968 campaign promise. In reaching this goal, Nixon said, quote, "We will finally, 28 years after the end of World War II, have done what I said in 1968 that we should do, that we should show our commitment to freedom by preparing to assure our young people theirs." A few fun facts. Command Sergeant Major Jeff Mellinger, believed to be the last drafted enlisted ranked soldier still on active duty, retired in 2011 as a Chief Warrant Officer 5. Ralph E. Rigby was the last Vietnam War era drafted soldier of Warrant Officer rank, retired from Army on November 10th of 2014 after a 42-year career. So they were the last ones that were actually drafted. In a lecture on the all-volunteer force at Duke University, former Secretary of Defense Robert Gates said, quote, "Over the past 4 decades, after a difficult transition period during the 1970s, the all-volunteer experiment has proven to be a remarkable success. The doubts, and there were many inside and outside the military, were largely overcome. Indeed, the United States would not be able to sustain complex, protracted missions like Iraq and Afghanistan in such a high standard of military performance without the dedication of seasoned professionals who choose to serve and keep on serving. Whatever shortcomings there may have been in Iraq and Afghanistan stem from failures and miscalculations at the top, not those doing the fighting and leading on the ground. It has taken every ounce of our troops' skill, initiative, and commitment to battle to a cunning and adaptive enemy at the front while overcoming bureaucratic lassitude and sometimes worse at the rear," end quote. On Memorial Day of 2014, on this site, General James Mattis stated, quote, "The all-volunteer force envisioned by our 37th president has stood the test on which this is America's longest war. After more than a dozen years of fighting, our all-volunteer military remained. Our ranks will remain filled with high-quality volunteers, and these are young Americans who volunteered looking beyond the hot political rhetoric swirling around this little understood wars. And they have rallied to our flag. It has been an honor of my career to mentor young service members as they begin their selfless careers serving the country they love. I was and am still tremendously inspired by each and every one of them who come through our recruitment offices. They do so not because they have to, but because they are called to by something much more than themselves. About 2 years ago, prior to COVID-19, Congress began taking a renewed interest in the draft, exploring whether the government should require all Americans to serve in some capacity as part of their civic duty, just like other countries do. At that time, despite the fact that the United States had record low unemployment rates and amazing pay increases than we had seen in decades, we were still meeting high numbers of enlistees each year. Even during the last 2 years, specifically when I was a deputy commander at Navy recruiting, we met 100% of our enlistment goal / mission in both 2020 and 2021, and are tracking along glide slope to meet our mission in 2022. I believe this shows still that the vision President Nixon had was 2020 and still holds true in 2022. Americans are independently and across the nation volunteering to serve in this military that we have. We absolutely need this more than ever, primarily to maintain our competitive global edge against our key adversaries, China and Russia, which explicitly are called out in our most recent national strategy as key competitors. Bottom line,